Hello, everybody. Welcome to the session for Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering. My name is Ulrike Tschirner, and I am the Director of Undergraduate Studies for BBE. And I have with me 2 students and 2 alum that will talk to you a little later about their experience and what they're up to right now. So first, I'm going to give you a short presentation. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, we'll have a question and answer session at the end too, so you can keep them till then. So Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering is one of the smaller engineering majors in the College of Science and Engineering, and we have 3 different tracks. One is food engineering, one is bioproducts engineering, and one is environmental and ecological engineering. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each and every one of them. So bioproducts, oops, sorry, forgot this one. Forgot to mention that we are actually the only engineering major on the St. Paul campus, and we are located in 2 different buildings. We are in the BioAct building, which is the one on the left, and in Coffert Lab, which is on the right. Since this is not in person, I obviously can't give you lab tours or show you around, but if any of you is interested in coming over and visiting at any point, just shoot me an email and we'll see if we can make it happen. So bioproducts engineering, which is right now the larger track in our major, is working with materials, energy, and chemicals from renewable resources. I generally describe it a little bit like chemical engineering. Has a little bit of material science in there too. The big difference is that we work with materials that are renewable, and that includes things like agriculture residue, wood, algae, municipal solid waste, which is the garbage, and things like that. Anything that is renewable. So just to give you a couple of examples is things like bioethanol, biodiesel from vegetable oil or from algae, biogas from municipal solid waste. Biogas is methane, but it is generated from something renewable instead of coming from the oil fields. Bio-based plastics, chemicals from biomass, that is actually one area that I think is going to grow significantly in the next couple of years. And then some of the more traditional industries like paper or composites material. Composites material are things like the Anderson windows. Or composites means it is put together from more than one material, essentially. So these are some of the companies that have hired our students in the last couple of years. I've highlighted a couple. Cargill is actually our #1 employer right now, and they've hired from all 3 of the tracks. NatureWorks is a spin-off from Cargill, and that is the one company that makes the compostable plastics, the PLAs. This is one of the bio-based plastics on the market, the major one right now. Domtar is a paper company. Donaldson is a local company that makes filters for air and water pollution. The Renewable Energy Group is a company that makes biodiesel. Poet actually is a big company. They are the ones that have the first cellulose-based ethanol plant, which means they're actually taking the straw from the corn stover, and they are making ethanol from that instead of using starch. Food engineering is focused on designing processes that help us to produce effective food and byproducts, increase food safety, increase food storability, and these are all companies that I'm sure you've heard of. One of the things I want to add here too, yes, we do have a food engineering track, but it is very similar in the foundation classes than the bioproducts engineering track. So I actually have quite a few bioproducts engineering students working for food industry. Alyssa, who is one of our alum who is here today, she actually graduated from the bioproducts engineering track, but works for Land O'Lakes for a food company. So there is a lot of overlap in between there. The electives are a little different. So you've seen most of these, Cargill again, Schwann Food, General Mills, Land O'Lakes, Hormel. Some companies you might not have seen. Fiberstar is a company that started with a patent in our department, and they're making fiber for food applications from leftover orange peel. And let's see, the SSOE group is an engineering consulting company, so is Tetra Pak. Environmental and ecological engineering is a little different, right? The other two are process product type tracks. Environmental and ecological engineering focuses on engineering issues in natural systems. We are a little different than the environmental engineering program in civil engineering. We are more focused on rivers and lakes. We are focused on protecting wetlands, watersheds. A lot of the solutions that we're working with are plant-based. So biosystems that control erosion and runoffs, rain gardens, and things like that. The examples here would be things like stormwater management, biofilters for water, nitrogen, and phosphorus removal, biofilters for air pollution, aquaponics, erosion control, and wetland restoration. The environmental and ecological engineering students generally work for either engineering consulting companies or they work for government agencies. So the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, for example, BAR Engineering or SRF Consulting, and actually Jacob Bierman, one of our alum who is here today, is working for that company. So he'll tell you a little bit more about what he is doing for that company. So one of the things I would like to go through a little bit is some of the research examples in BBE, because I think that might give you a little bit of a better idea about what we are about. So algae, for example, we have several faculty that are working with algae in different applications at different levels. So this one here is a graduate student who is looking at small algae samples. And if I remember right, this was a project where they were screening different algae samples for oils. One of the things that algae is being considered for is the generation of biodiesel. So for that, you want an algae type that has really high oil content. Algae don't compete with food applications. They grow in water, so they don't need agricultural land, which is one of the big benefits they have. This is another project, algae project. This was another faculty. This actually was a summer project of an undergraduate student. So they were designing different ways of growing larger quantities of algae. So he designed every single one of these little setups with different bags in there. And they were trying to figure out how they can produce larger numbers of algae, having them outside, essentially. And then we actually have faculty that are growing algae in a greenhouse, which is another step up size-wise. And they're used, or they are researched for different applications. There's the one for biodiesel where you want to have a lot of oil in there, but there is also an algae application that is used for water cleaning. We had a pilot trial actually in one of the municipal treatment plants. Algae, as it grows, it needs nitrogen, it needs phosphorus, and it takes that out of the water. So the idea was, let's grow the algae on the polluted water and then just filter the algae off, you'll have cleaner water and you have the algae biomass that you can do something else with. This is another faculty. He works on bioplasticizers from soybean oil. Plasticizers are small molecules, and what is used right now are the so-called phthalates. Phthalates are made from petroleum oil, and they are carcinogenic, mutagenic, so really not good for us. The issue with them too is since they are small, you put them in plastic to make the plastic more pliable, to make it softer. So these duckies, for example, are softer, can be squeezed and things like that. But the issue you're having with this is because they're small, they're migrating out of the plastic. And then, for example, if a kid puts that ducky in their mouth, they're actually ingesting some of those plasticizers. So what this faculty is working on, and if I remember right, I think Alyssa actually worked for him for a while, making these plasticizers from soybean oil. So you can see the one here in the middle that has all these wiggles on it. That is a plasticizer that's made from soybean oil. It doesn't have the issues of being bad for humans. This is one of our faculty, Brett Barney. He works with bacteria and algae, and he is using these bacteria and algae for biofuels and biofertilizers. I didn't actually mention this before, but we have a little bit more biology in our major than some of the other majors. So for example, if you deal with algae and bacteria, you have to understand a little bit more about biology. So Brett, I know one of the projects, for example, that he was trying to get I think it was a bacteria to make biodiesel directly instead of making the oil and then having to convert it to biodiesel. The biofertilizer is a project trying to recover nitrogen because we have that issue with having too much nitrogen and phosphorus in our rivers and lakes. This is a project of a faculty who does a lot of modeling. So he works with what we call the biorefinery. Traditionally, if you have oil and you're refining it, you're making a lot of different products from it. With biomass, we are looking at the same concept. We want to take the biomass, we want to take wood chips, we want to take straw, and we want to break it down into a number of different products that are useful for us. If you don't do that, if you just take one out, for example, if you just take the sugars out and make bioplastics, that is not going to be economically feasible. So we have to be able to break this down. We have to be able to understand what can we make out of it and how does this work in the whole system. This is actually my research. I'm a chemist. I didn't tell you this. I'm a lignin chemist. If you don't know what lignin is the brown stuff in the fibers that holds fibers together. And this was a project, it's actually this molecule, this very nice looking molecule in the middle here. This project was focused on making a bio-based plastic that is less water permeable. PLA, or polylactic acid, that is the polymer that is made by nature work, actually is very polar. So it lets water vapor through. Lignin, on the other side, is very water repellent. So what we did is we generated a lignin PLA copolymer. And these two squares here on the left side, you see the PLA as it started. On the right side, you see the copolymer lignin and the polymer. So you can probably see right here what the issue is. The issue is that this lignin copolymer is brown. And we have so far not been able to get rid of that color. So it's very limited in what we can do with it. But it definitely was less water permeable. So it accomplished what we were setting out to do. There are other polymers on there, and I just recently had a Europe project, so an undergraduate students working on this. If you look at that blue picture here with these little beads in there, these beads are made by the bacteria. So this is a microbial process. We feed the bacteria sugar, they eat the sugar and they make the plastic. So there's no chemistry involved. This is 100% biology. And at the end, you can see they look a little bit like stuffed sausages. So instead of having to go to a chemical process, you are using a solvent to take out the polymer and you reprecipitate it and you have that particular polymer. This polymer, or some of these polymers are on the market, but they're still pretty rare. They're still fairly expensive to make. So there is a lot of development that still needs to be done with this material. This is Abdunur Abbas's research. He works with nanotechnology and biosensors for food and bioremediation. If you look at that milk carton there, it has a red and a green dot on it. With his nanoparticles, he put a sensor on there. So the milk, instead of waiting until it expires and then throwing it away, no matter if it's good or bad, you can actually see on the box if the milk is good or not good anymore. This is one of his labs. So we generally have a number of postdocs and graduate students working, and very often we have undergraduate students working with them too. This is a bioremediation project. They have nanoparticles on this sponge, and these nanoparticles can absorb mercury. So this is used to cleaning mercury out of rivers and lakes. And apparently you don't need very much. So this sponge supposedly is capable of cleaning a whole lake. Now, what I never really figured out and that they couldn't answer me is how do you get all the water from a lake to go through that one tiny little sponge? Aquaponics, I'm sure you have seen some of that. We have one faculty who has been working with some of the aquaponic issues. Biodiesel in any size. On the right, you see a lab experiment. So this was an undergraduate lab here where we made biodiesel. On the left, you see something a little scaled up. This is in one of our pilot plants where they are actually making biodiesel on a transportable unit, essentially, and at a little larger scale. The environmental and ecological engineering type of research is a lot different, where they're looking at watershed management, pollution management, policies. This is Joe Magner, another one of our faculty. And what you see on the right here are the so-called floating islands. And I don't know if you've seen them. They're actually around in one of the state parks. I just saw some. What they are plastic, recycled plastics. And then they put the plants in these holes that are there. And these islands float on the lake and the roots go into the water. And they are absorbing nitrogen and phosphorus, thereby, very naturally cleaning the lake. I've heard that the biggest issue is that they can't keep the geese from ripping the plants out of these floating islands. So they've been coming up with all kind of flashing things that are supposed to keep the geese away. Biofilters. Biofilters can be anything like wood chips or straw or something like this. And the way this works is in any of these biomass, you have microbes. And if there's water going through, the microbes start eating some of the sugars. And as they eat the sugars, they also need nitrogen and phosphorus, and they get that out of the polluted water. So in the end, what you have is you have a bunch of half-digested wood chips and cleaner water. This student up here also is a student that had a Europe project going. So she was testing some of the flow through some of these biofilters. And if I remember right, they also tested a number of different materials for that purpose. So these are just a couple of examples. Obviously, we have other things going on, but again, since I can't really walk you through our labs, I just thought I'd give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on. Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering has a very active advisory council that helps us with curriculum development, mentoring of students, co-ops and internships. And most important, they give us money for scholarships. We have a very good scholarship program. All of our students that have a cumulative GPA above 3.2 are on scholarships. And of course, we also need them for jobs for our graduates, and they help with that. This is kind of the end of it. If anybody would like to contact me after this is my email. It's just my first name at umn.edu. So I have a bunch of pictures on here to remind me of a couple of things. We have several very active student chapters in the department. That's the picture on the left there. We do encourage our students very heavily to look for internships and co-ops. Over 70% of our students do have an internship before they graduate. And that results in really good job placements at the end. We've been above 90%, 95%, 93%, something in that range. The last couple of years, not counting, of course, the COVID year, that was a little more difficult. So let me just stop this and see if anybody has a question right now before I go to our student panel. No questions. Well, then let's move on, and maybe we'll start with the alum. So how about Jacob and Alyssa? How about Jacob, you start. Tell us who you are, tell us where you come from, what you do.
Sure. So I'm Jacob. I graduated in 2019. I was on the EEE track in BBE, and while I was in undergrad, I had 2 different research opportunities with different professors there. One was doing a stormwater monitoring of road salt and the salinity going into the storm sewer, and then the other one was taking a lot of weather data and compiling that for Bruce Wilson to run some weather models. And then I also had an internship with the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization. And now I work with SRF Consulting, like Ulrike said earlier. My water there is as a water resources engineer. So we do a lot of storm sewer design, green water infrastructure. I do a lot of modeling of watersheds. So using HydroCAD or XPSWIM to size different stormwater infrastructure components. I think that's covers everything you wanted me to cover.
Well, is there anything you want to add, or otherwise we'll let Alyssa go first and then open it for questions?
I'll think about it some more and let Alyssa go.
Okay, Alyssa, how about you?
Hi, so my name is Alyssa. I also graduated in 2019 along with Jacob. And however, I was not on the Triple E track. So like Ulrike had mentioned earlier, I was on the bioproducts track. However, I now work in food. I will point out though that Land O'Lakes is not just a food company. So we also do have other areas, but I myself work in the food side. I'm in the dairy foods business units, and my title is a process engineer there. So we act as internal consultants to our dairy foods manufacturing facilities. I'm actually currently traveling for my job. I travel like 50% of the time to our dairy foods manufacturing facilities across the country as a consultant. And then when I was at the U, I had several opportunities. I actually was the outreach assistant to the department, so that wasn't so much research, but it really got me intertwined. I got to know a lot of the professors as well as students. So that was really neat. So shout out to that. And then I had research. So like Ulrike also mentioned, I did work for the faculty member that did the bio-based plasticizers. So that was really, I learned so much hands-on experience there. And then I also had an internship at Land O'Lakes actually, which was great for job placement. They actually offered me a role before I even graduated, before I even started my senior year. So that was super helpful for landing a job after graduation. For my internship, I was actually not in the food side, I was in the feed side, and I worked in a manufacturing facility in southern Missouri. So I guess that's kind of a quick high-level overview of what I've done.
There's one question in the what are some of the most interesting courses for BBE or best introductory courses? Anything you two could recommend? Otherwise, we'll move on to the students and let them recommend something.
I mean, I think the ones that kind of are like further along your track are the most interesting. So for me, that was the watershed modeling and watershed engineering courses. Not really introductory though. So I'm not sure if someone has a better answer for that.
Yeah, I guess introductory, I don't know if it falls in that line. I would agree, taking courses that are more along your track are, I mean, you're going to go along with your interests in that way. So for me, I really enjoyed the polymers course that I took. But yeah, introduction wise, I don't know, I guess in general terms, the CSE intro class that they have everybody take, I thought that was really helpful for me. That's kind of actually how I learned about bioproducts engineering. I had been in a different major prior to switching. So for intro wise, I mean, that's a required course, but it really did help me.
Maybe I'll take that one. We do have a separate orientation class too, the BBE 1001, which is open to anybody, even if you're not in the major. So if you're just looking for a general introduction, that could be a good one to take. So there are no prereqs or anything like this. The classes that they think is most interested, those are a little further down the line. All right, how about the students? Lauren, would you like to go?
Yeah, I can do a quick intro. I'm Lauren. I'm a 5th year planning to graduate next December. And my experience has been, I've worked in a few labs, including the honeybee lab on campus. I did a couple UROPs in the department working on white rot fungi. I did a 15-month co-op with SAPI, which is a pulp and paper mill up north. I was the environmental co-op for 15 months. And I interned with SunOpta, a smaller organic foods company this summer as an R&D engineer. And I'll be returning there next summer as a quality engineering intern.
Catherine?
Hi, I am a 4th year BBE student and I'm in the Triple E track. During my undergrad time, I've had 2 intern experiences. So I worked with one company called Young Environmental Consulting after my sophomore year, and we looked at gully erosion around one of the watershed districts. And then this past summer, I interned with Bar Engineering, which is another, I guess it's not totally environmental consulting, but I worked with their water resources business group and got a broader range of experience, the different modeling programs they use. And then I also did some work with water quality in lakes. And then currently this year I'm doing research. It's more through the environmental engineering program. It's at the St. Anthony Falls lab. But I will say that one of my favorite classes was the molecular and cellular engineering class that we take with Professor Brett Barney. And some of the skills I learned in that class I'm now using with my current research, which is also related to algae. So yeah.
Jacob, I think there is one question here that you might be able to answer. What sort of different careers will a BBE major lead to when compared to environmental engineering and civil engineering?
There is a lot of overlap. So within my water resources group, we do have a couple people from the BBE Triple E track, and then there are also civil engineers that have the emphasis in environmental. So there is a lot that can do the same thing, but if you were more interested in like the stream restoration aspect of it, we've done some like stream stabilization or designing more naturalized channels. I feel like a lot of that work has been done more by the BBE people who have that more ecological engineering background, whereas the civil engineers I know have done more of the more direct stormwater, storm sewer design, some of that more concrete and harder infrastructure.
I generally say the built environment versus the natural environment. Let's see. Okay, here's something for all of the panelists. What is it about in general that interests you in the BBE major? How did you pick this major?
I actually picked this major by coming to this event 4 years ago. I started as a BME, and after that orientation class, I didn't think it was a good fit anymore. And I think my favorite part about BBE is that it's a little smaller and there's a focus on sustainability. I've gotten to know quite a few professors and faculty in my time here, and I've really enjoyed learning more about their careers and research. And yeah, your classes are pretty small. Senior year, we have 30 people about, so you get pretty close to your peers, and you won't really get that with a bigger major.
I can go next. So I, like I had mentioned, was in a different major originally, and it was chemical engineering. So a little similar to the track that I did with BBE. But ultimately, I decided to switch because, like Lauren mentioned, it was a smaller major. The fit felt more applicable to me. I was able to get to know my fellow peers as well as professors in a much easier manner, I would say. I got to have these experiences that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. These opportunities just kept coming up because you just get to know everybody. And so people are like, hey, are you interested in this, that? It's just a little bit easier with close-knit community. And also the ag side of things, it's a little more connected to ag industry. And that's something that I knew that I wanted to pursue, whether that was food or feed, manufacturing, process engineering, but focus on that sustainability side. Especially, I noticed that a lot of my fellow peers in this major did have a very similar mentality to that. So I just connected it a little bit deeper of a level, and the problem solving. I loved that too. So it was a great choice for me.
Yeah, I actually started out as computer science for my first year, and then I decided I wanted to do something environmental. And so my advisor had me talk to Ulrike, who recommended BBE for some reason. But then it just was a good fit. And like other people said, the class sizes are small, which is really nice that the like undergraduate research opportunities in BBE were a lot more frequent than what I would hear in other majors, which was huge for resume building and experience. So I found that part of it really helpful.
For me, similar to Lauren, actually, I had applied to Minnesota with a biomedical engineering degree, but I talked to my advisor, I think when I was picking out classes, and she mentioned having just toured the lab where a professor came up with a sponge that could absorb mercury. And I thought that sounds super cool. So I decided to try out bioproducts engineering. And then I think Alyssa mentioned this as well, but the connections in a smaller major like this are really nice. For my first intern experience, the woman who I worked for had come into my freshman orientation class, and I had remembered her my sophomore year, and I reached out to Ulrike for the contact information. So things like that, I feel like are really helpful and useful in a smaller major.
Catherine, maybe you want to take this next question. What are some of the student groups that relate to BBE?
Well, I'm told one of the best student groups is the Food and Bioproducts Engineering Organization. That's one that I've been involved in during my time here. And it's a great mix of activities. So it's a project-based group, and we usually try to complete a couple projects each year, partnered with some community member. So we've built a greens bubbler to try to save water while washing spinach. We partnered with 3M last year and tried to build a composter that could compost industrial grade bioplastics. So that's really fun. And then we'll also have speakers come in every week to our meetings and alumni, and they talk about their jobs and let us know what kind of classes were most useful or what they recommend when you're going into an interview for an internship. But besides that, there are also a lot of other student groups. There's one called ASABE that's more geared toward the Triple E side. And then even other outside groups. I know there are a lot of people who do Engineers Without Borders who are in the BBE major. And so you get to meet other majors as well. So lots of options.
Jacob, were you in ASABE?
I was not.
Okay. I think we answered the question that people changed majors. Yes, that is actually very common. Catherine, did you come in as a freshman? No, you didn't. You just said that. I don't think anybody here came in as a freshman. Okay, for a double major, what majors would you recommend pairing with bioproducts? I know computer science is universally important nowadays, but are there any others that would pair well? The majority of the double majors I have seen are BBE and chemistry, simply because there is enough overlap that it doesn't take too long. But we also do have quite a few students that do minors. Anybody, I don't know, Catherine, are you working on a minor?
I am. I have a plant biology minor, which I don't know if I'll use it in industry, but I love plant biology classes. They're so fun. So, and I think it's super interesting. And honestly, if there's the microbiology side to BBE, and so that's kind of a way that I can get more experience with that, even if I go into something like water resource engineering where there might be less used. But there are a lot of options. I think on the website, I would just look through the ones that best relate to classes, because a lot of times there is overlap. For plant biology, there was at least one class that overlapped.
Anybody else? Yeah. For the bioproducts engineering track, actually, if you pick the right electives, you can get a chemistry minor without taking any extra classes. So Eric, would you like to ask some of your questions? You have some good questions if there are no open other questions.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Jarris. I am the Student and Program Support Specialist for the BBE department. I do some scholarship coordinating, some external relations. I was the leader of the student group that Alyssa was a part of, the BBE ambassadors. And so got a lot of information for you. I'll actually be at Kaufman tomorrow from 10 until 3. So stop by downstairs and buy the food. I'll have all this information in paper copies. So if you're interested in 4-year plans, looking at a little bit more of these electives that we were talking about, feel free to stop by down there. You can also sign up for our bi-weekly student newsletter that we kind of give out, give you a little bit more information about what's going on in our major and what students are doing with it. So what am I actually talking about, Ulrike? What did you want me to say?
Sorry, ask your questions.
Yes, out of the panelists that I have here, what is some advice that you would give to a student interested in BBE?
I guess I would say that a lot of the professors, as people maybe have seen from the presentation, there's a lot of interesting research, and I think professors are really open to talking about what they do. So if you're interested, I would reach out that way. And I would also say, even reaching out to current students, I'm sure my contact information maybe will be given out, but people can talk about their experience. I know I wasn't sure which track to choose between Triple E and BPE, so I definitely relied on asking upperclassmen about their experiences to make my decision. So I think just reaching out to people and learning more.
Yes, and I would definitely agree with that. Also take up Ulrike and our offer to come and try to schedule a tour. I think that's really helpful. There's just so much going on and you really get to see hands-on. I think that will be really beneficial. And the other thing is student study groups. Just in general, I think forming study groups with other people is so helpful. You get a different perspective that you might not have caught, and you get to play off of each other's strengths and weaknesses. And in a department like BBE, you have just such a tight-knit group. It should be pretty easy to do so, and it's just really helpful overall.
So with like the 1001 class especially, they just bring in different professionals in and they talk about like their jobs and what they do. And I found that really helpful to see where people end up specifically. And if there is one that like, if there is someone doing a job that sounds interesting to you, they also like give their contact information. They're happy to talk to you. So it's like great to learn more about it that way. And then those people are also available just to become a part of your network. That's one of the ways that I got one of my internships as well. So they're really good at helping you make those connections.
Yeah, people love to talk about themselves. So find some faculty or students who've been doing stuff you're interested in and see if you think it'd be a good fit.
What was your favorite class in BBE? And for the alumni, how does it pertain to your daily life and your employment now?
I mean, mine is easy. Mine was the hydrology modeling courses. And I build HydroCAD models most days, or I'm working in them, and I'm using soils data to figure out what the infiltration is going to be when it rains, and I'm designing storm sewer. So like that class specifically had a project where in the interview I talked through what we did there, and they said, oh, that's what we do like every day. So it was super helpful to get the job, and I still use it frequently.
So for me, I don't know if it was necessarily my favorite class, but I will say that the class that was most applicable to my role now is actually capstone, senior design. For me, in my current role, I am given a problem. It's never really defined whether that's a process related problem or formulation for one of the products. I mean, it's a whole vast array, but regardless, I'm given a problem and it's like, okay, here's your problem. Now you need to figure out a solution. So whether you need to map it out in a program, et cetera, et cetera. So basically given a problem, very like small details, and you have to go and you have to investigate, you have to problem solve, you have to put something together, a plan, a course of action, and then you go from there. So for me, most applicable was capstone. Also, it was pretty fun, but there were some other classes, so I don't know if it was my favorite, but most applicable for sure.
I think I would say last year I was a junior. My favorite class was the molecular cellular engineering class. I just thought it was super fascinating, and I loved. It was unlike anything I had done before, and I think bacteria are very fascinating. But this year as a senior, I'm taking a lot of classes that are focused on watershed engineering or impaired waters and water resources, and those I'm all finding really fascinating and hopefully applicable someday. So.
I'd say my favorite class was chemistry of biomass, which Ulrike teaches. I actually took it online while I was on co-op. So as we were learning about different biopolymers like cellulose, lignin, and the whole paper making process, I actually got to go out and see in the field what I was learning. So it was really cool to just be able to make that direct connection.
I didn't make her say that.
Did any of the students in the crowd have any questions at this point? Any more?
Ask them for the advice question.
I did that one already, I thought.
Good, sorry.
Well,
There's one new question in there asking if we took any classes over the summer. I did take one chemistry class over the summer when I switched from computer science to BBE, but I really thought I was going to have to take more, but one summer chemistry class to switch majors and I was all set.
Yeah, I guess I could use this question to say I did not take any summer classes, but I was able to study abroad my sophomore year and was worried I didn't want to take summer classes, but it ended up working out. And I worked with Ulrike to look at my schedule and see how I needed to rearrange things. So I don't think that BBE, it's not like the most flexible major, but if you want to switch in or if you want to have some kind of experience like a study abroad and you plan far enough in advance, you can definitely do it and still graduate in the 4 years.
where did you study abroad, Catherine?
I studied abroad in Hong Kong, which was very cool. And it was an engineering school, so I still took some of my technical classes, which is tough when you're abroad, but that's okay. It still worked out. It was a very cool experience.
I can't remember if the rest of you had any study abroad experiences, Jacob or Alyssa or Lauren. Lauren had her co-op though, which took her in a different direction. So that's kind of cool.
There's one more question. A lot of this major seems hand-on, so I'm curious how much of what you do is outside versus inside.
Well, I can say I think I would have had more outside experience if COVID hadn't happened. I know I've watched a lot of videos of field trips that we would have taken, so I don't know if I can fully answer, but I think it's fairly hands-on and there's a lot of labs.
Alyssa, how much of your time is inside versus outside?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, for me, I don't get to be outside as much. I mean, it's a very interesting role that I have right now because I am traveling so much. But for me, when I'm traveling, it's not to be outside. It's going to be in four walls in a manufacturing facility. But it's kind of interesting because that means I get to go to different dairy foods plants. So I get to see processes like butter, processed cheese, natural cheese, and I get to problem solve in all of those areas. So I get to learn a lot and see a lot of different things. So it's pretty fascinating. And none of my days are ever the same. So I guess for me, it's not that I get to travel outside or be outside, but I get to be doing a lot of different things every single day.
How about you, Jacob?
My job is majority inside because it's design work for a civil engineering consulting company, but there are some instances where I will have field work for a project where I'm trying to calibrate a watershed model. And so I have equipment out in the field to measure rainfall and responses in storm sewers. And then there's also various other instances like construction observation or just visiting a site. So more inside than outside in my career, but there is some of both.
Are there any college experiences that you guys would say have helped you along your journey that you don't think you would be there without that experience?
Definitely the co-op. And I actually got that position because I responded to one of Ulrike's emails asking people to send in their resumes for this role. So I'm very thankful that I was able to get 15 months of hands-on experience. I was actually there when the pandemic hit. And since it was an essential business, I still was going into work every day. So I think that was really valuable. And it helped me kind of identify what I would be looking for in a full-time job after. And even though I don't think I'm going to be going into the pulp and paper industry necessarily, I definitely learned a lot about engineering in general and myself as far as my career aspirations. So takeaways: answer Enrique's emails and get some outside experience while you're in college.
She's trying to decide which offer she's taking right now. So co-ops also help a lot when it comes to getting your full-time positions.
Well, I'm dangerously close to setting a new record of talking about my time in college and not mentioning that I was on the rowing team once. But spending all that time on the Mississippi River is why I got interested in water resources and the environmental engineering aspect of everything as well. So without that experience, I don't think I would have made it to BBE.
I would say internship, external experience, and my research. You know, honestly, both. I think the research experience within the department really gave me a lot of skills I wouldn't have had otherwise. And then also it helped me to form some really great networks. And then the external being the internship, seeing the industry, because, you know, research is really great, but it's very different than what I'm doing now. However, I wouldn't change it. I thought it was so valuable to me. So I would say both experiences, internal being research and external being industry experience in an internship, both critical.
Yeah, I think for me, it would be a combination. Really my sophomore year, I came back from studying abroad and decided I wanted to pursue the EEE track and be involved with something with natural systems or water. And then after my sophomore year, I had an internship with a small environmental consulting company, and it was a lot of field work. So I was outside every day. And I worked with someone who actually he's doing his PhD with BBE right now, but he was a geology major. And so I learned a lot about erosion and soil, and I loved it. I loved being outside and learning. So that kind of helped me see where I wanted to go with my path as well.
One other thing I'll say is don't be afraid to pursue your interests outside of your career goals while you're at the U, because there's so many opportunities and connections here. I worked in the honeybee laboratory my sophomore year, and I just did that because I thought bees are really cool. And I'm volunteering at the Raptor Center right now because I like birds. And I don't know, you're just never going to have that opportunity to pursue things with professionals who have PhDs in entomology right down the road from where your classes are. So it doesn't all have to be focused on the future. Find things you enjoy while you're here.
Very well said, Lauren. Thank you for that.
No more questions? Everybody's very quiet. Again, my offer stands. if you would like to come to St. Paul sometime and look around, come and visit us. We are always happy to show people around, and or tomorrow stop by and talk to Eric just to get some more information. We are, as was mentioned several times, we are a small major. And that means that our faculty know the students, which is good and bad. You have an easy time getting hold of a faculty generally, but it also means they know if you don't come to class. Oh, there's another question. If we had more questions, could we reach out to alum through email? What do the alum say to that?
Yep.
Sure.
Can I share your contact information?
Yeah.
Yep, that's fine. And then I just wanted to add really quick, if it's okay. I know that one of the things that almost deterred me from going to BBE at first was that it was in St. Paul. And it ended up being one of my favorite things by the end of my senior year. It was so funny. I had this opposition to the idea of going to St. Paul. I had always been on East Bank, my freshman year, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so far away. I have to get on a bus. And like, it was just this whole mental block that I had about it. I'm not kidding. I loved it. It almost felt like you were having a whole different experience. The college feels very different. And you're still having classes on East Bank, so you're getting to see everything. I don't know, it has a totally different feel. It almost feels like a small school. So you get the big school, small school vibes. It's really interesting. So don't let that deter you if you're saying, oh, there's no way I could be on the St. Paul campus. I can almost guarantee you're going to end up loving it.
I know a lot of students use that opportunity on the bus to brush up on the things that they need to learn before their test or for their exams or get things prepared. So it's not all bad taking that bus ride. It gets you there and you don't have to do any driving. You don't have to worry about parking. It just gets you there and you get to get back when you need to as well.
Yes, I've been learning Korean on Duolingo during my commutes, so.
Well, no more questions. Any other words of wisdom from our panel? Otherwise, I think we'll let people go. Thank you very much to my panel. I appreciate that you took the time to be here today and talk to the students.
No problem.
Yeah, happy to be here.
You're welcome, and good luck, freshmen. It gets easier.
Yeah, good luck, everyone.